Aquaba. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to the Black Slate Atlanta Podcast. The Black Slate is an independent, not-for-profit social and political action team. Our goal is to tackle the issues affecting our low to moderate income communities in the Atlanta area. We will focus on topics that are centered around impacting legislation and decisions that target our neighborhoods. Through commentary and interviews, we hope you will find the Black Slate Atlanta podcast beneficial and enlightening. And now, here's our host.
Today, brothers and sisters, we have with us Mary Hooks, who is one of the point leaders for the Cop City resistance here in the city of Atlanta. We're going to have a dialogue with her. And with that information, I'm going to turn it over to our hostess, Imani Jabali. Go ahead, my sister.
Greetings, everybody. How are you today? It's a pleasure to have Miss Mary Hooks with us. My name is Imani Jabali, as you heard, and I'll be your hostess for the day. But Miss Hooks is going to be doing most of the talking. And let me start by saying thank you very much for being here with us today and welcome to our program. Would you mind giving us a little background about yourself and how you got involved with the movement against the Public Safety Training Center?
And first of all, thanks again for having me. I'm super grateful to be sharing this time with y'all. Let's see here. Well, I migrated to Atlanta about 17 years ago. And when I moved here, one of my comrades said, now the West End is the heartbeat of the city. And if you're looking for Black people, because, you know, I come from a Black community, so I got to find Black community wherever I move. And so I remember she drove me around the West End and was like, this is where you need to be. And I actually kind of lived in a few other places that I could, you know, once I was able to figure it out, I moved in Atlanta to the West End and made home there, and have typically stayed within Southwest Atlanta. And I got politicized after I met a woman in a bar. Real talk. I met a woman in a bar one night, and she told me, I asked her what she did for work. And she said she was trying to stop the shackling of Black women while giving birth in prison. And it blew my mind. I said, that's happening. But I think the thing that really got me was the fact that you could do something about it. And I grew up in the conditions, you know, my people were deeply impacted by the war on drugs, the crack epidemic, all the things. And so I said, well, I'm gonna see if this organizing thing can work, you know? And the more I learned about the struggle of our people, the more I learned about people's movements and people's struggles and different elders, mostly across the South, who poured into me, I knew that this was, you know, my life's work. And eventually joined the staff of Southerners on New Ground. And currently I serve as the National Field Secretary with the Movement for Black Lives. And this issue around public safety has been one I've been organizing around. Cop City is one issue, but I believe maybe back in 2015-ish, we started working in coalition with the Georgia Latino Alliance for Human Rights. That is when we saw all the copycat anti-immigration bills coming, and Georgia was doing its thing. And so we went county to county trying to get folks to cancel their contracts with the immigrant customs enforcement. And then from there, began to do some work around the decriminalization of marijuana. We understood that, you know, Black and white people smoke marijuana and cannabis at the same rate. But here in this city, 90% of the people getting arrested for was Black people, mostly young Black people. And so we were able to, with the leadership of the Solutions Not Punishment Collaborative, be able to make that charge one where for an ounce of cannabis, one can get $100 ticket. We didn't believe a young person's future should have to be in jeopardy over a little bit of reefer, you know? And so then from there, we began to take on the issue of bail. And we were doing court watching, and we saw our people getting hit with all of these fines and getting hit with these heinous bail amounts. And people were literally sitting in the Atlanta jail all because they couldn't afford their bail. And I was with Song at the time, and we said, Spirit told me this, said, we've been bailing out people who have been taking direct action as it relates to police murders. But what about the people who survived the encounters and the slow death that happens through the court system? And so we kicked off an initiative to bail out Black mothers for Mother's Day, to highlight the crisis of what was happening. And we did that and provided services, and folks got politicized and joined the organization. It was a beautiful, beautiful project, and people all over the country continue to do that work and have seeded some bail funds here in the city for, ongoing work. And after, and I was in 2018, I believe, under Keisha Lance's Bottoms administration, that she eventually signed off on bail reform. It cleared the jail of what used to be 700 something a night, turned into 40 something a night, give or take. And then we took the leadership of Women on the Rise, and they led the charge around closing the city jail. And that, Keisha Lance also signed the policy to close that. And unfortunately, the city has not made good on its promise to close it and turn it into a wellness center. But what also happened, as we know, 2020 was, we saw some of the, the largest mass mobilizations in this country has ever seen. And we called for the defunding of police. And I think that, many people were not okay with the defunding of police. And I think a lot of it was because I think the initial reaction was people were like, oh no, who am I call tomorrow? And part of our logic and understanding was that we knew that we wasn't going to take away the police tomorrow, not even in 5-10 years, probably. But what we understood is that they get 30-some% of the city's budget. And every year there is somebody, several people who are impacted by police violence. We see the over-policing, the over-criminalization, and we were calling for resources to be poured into our community. We didn't want police to just, come when the damage has been done. We wanted solutions on the front end to prevent the harm from happening and try to clean up the mess that the war on drugs have, impacted our communities. And so in that response, we called for that. And then in 2021, under the leadership of Joyce Shepard, the city signed a lease with the Atlanta Police Foundation to build a police training facility, popularly known as Cop City, because we understand that they intend to build a fake apartment complex, a fake nightclub, and all of this infrastructure in order to practice urban guerrilla warfare training. And that's their language, not mine. And so, and since that started, there has been resistance every step of the way. And when they decided to do it and they passed the ordinance around it in 2021, then came that election. I'm sure you all had y'all boots on the ground around that one. That was a pretty contested election. And many of the people, who was running during that time, made commitments that they would try to stop it, that they weren't, didn't support it. And unfortunately, they did not. And that is when forest defenders, young, brave forest defenders began occupying the forest. Their position was, not only was there a militarization of policing that we are concerned about, but also the environmental degradation and what it means for that working class Black community situated inside of unincorporated DeKalb. Atlanta owns the land, but it's situated over there. Those folks had no voice and their opinions wasn't sought. And actually in 2007, the city had made a commitment to make that a green space, a place where people can come and bring your babies, all the things. And they reneged on that and gave it to the Atlanta Police Foundation for $10 a year is the lease. And,
Wow.
And time I hear that, that just shakes something in my spirit. I'm like, folks can barely get housing and they can get a $10 a lease for 85 acres of land. And you gotta think about the 40 acres and a mule. I get all in my chest. And so, and since then, I'll fast forward, much resistance have happened over the last 2 years. In January, a police raid took to the Weelani Forest, home of the Muskogee people, which was also a previous prison farm. Interesting note, Michael Julian Bond once worked at that prison farm as a corrections officer. But they came in raiding. They ended up murdering Tortuguita, a young protester, Black Venezuelan, murdered Tortuguita. Recently, we learned that police would not face any charges for that. And since there's just been weeks of action and ongoing tactics to try to put pressure on them, including this current referendum that we initiated, one of the first times. Let me correct myself. I believe there was a referendum that was done in the early aughts as related to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and folks didn't want that there, and they were going to initiate a referendum, but I believe they didn't get maybe 10,000 signatures, so they wasn't able to collect enough signatures. We, on the other hand, have been able to collect 116,000 people who want their opportunity to vote on this issue.
That is so very helpful. Thank you. I've got a few follow-up questions. That is remarkable. Could you maybe define what SONG is for us?
So SONG, Southerners on New Ground, is a Southern LGBTQ organization that essentially SONG's position is trying to bring those who fight for issues of sexuality and gender more left as it relates to racial and economic justice, and those fighting for racial and economic justice, bring them more left as it relates to issues around gender and sexuality, and has been around for 30-something years. Joan Garner, who passed away a few years ago, who served here in the city as a commissioner, Fulton County Commissioner, was one of the founders of the organization. And yeah, so after I met SONG, they were like, I joined as a member. I believe in being a member of something, okay? You join something, you give of your time, and your talents. And so I joined as a member, and then they asked me to come on full-time. They'd raised some money. They said they wanted my full-time attention. And so through the SONG work is when some of the campaigns that I named, I was mostly doing that work as someone who just lives here, but also I served a few roles while I was on staff, campaign coordinator, campaign organizer, all kind of stuff, just doing whatever the assignment called for. And particularly for the Cop City fight, as in 2021, I began to do more national work serving with the Movement for Black Lives, the national ecosystem of Black-led organizations. I believe you all should certainly be a part of it. We can talk more about that later. And part of my working role was to support local, and still is to support local formations across the country, to build base, to build organizational infrastructure, do the political education, do what is asked, come with my toolbox and try to, help build Black power. And this particular fight around Cop City, we supported. Initially, I was just helping to move resources, helping to train local organizers, making sure they had particularly Black organizers to be inside of this fight. So some of the initial canvassing, we helped steward some of that work. And then I was in January when the raid happened, I was on my way to New Zealand to build with the Māori people to learn how they were thinking about criminal justice reform and the different ways they were using and are using cultural traditions to help get their folk out of the carceral system. And I got word that they had murdered that baby in the forest. And I said, okay, when I went to New Zealand, we poured libation for Tortuguita. And when I came back, the forest defenders had asked for a meeting with me and a few other comrades. And it was at that point, I think it was clear that what was visibly being shown was a lot of young white people, just to be frank about it, a lot of young white people in the forest. And people were like, this ain't an issue Black people care about. But the reality of it's an issue that many Black people care about. And I think because people didn't see an entry point as to how to get involved, it left people like, okay, is this our fight or not? And so when I walked the forest with them for almost 2 hours, hearing the stories, learning about how they were building community, that they were every week, they still are doing food giveaways and supporting and, being an offering to the Black community around there. And I said, well, say less, friends, say less. And I began to, my first thing was helping to plan the next week of action that was to happen. And then helping to raise money. And then Kamal Franklin with the Community Movement Builders, that's been a comrade of mine for some time. He called me and said, hey, look, we think we can do a referendum in the city. And I said, well, all right, well, y'all have the smart lawyers look at it and let's see what we can do. And some other lawyers that's smarter than me, looked at it and looked at Camden County, who also did a referendum down over in Camden, and it held up in the Georgia courts. And we said, all right, friends, this might be an opening. And so as I saw that people were interested, I just put the call out. I said, friends, let's get on the call. Let's start getting folks at the table. I believe in organization. So pulled in other organizations that I know believe in base building, know how to knock some doors, you know what I mean? Ain't afraid to talk to strangers. And we begin to stand up the infrastructure to build a very large volunteer program. We also did a paid canvas, and we also had organizational partners that partner with us, like the New Georgia Project, like the American Friends Service Committee, and several organizations, Black Male Initiative, Black Men Build, who begin, probably one of the hottest summers, spending the whole summer collecting signatures. It was one of the, I would say it's probably one of the largest scaled campaigns I've ever worked on. And I must say it's been, Black Mama's Day bailout, actually, I was going to say it's been the most touching, but actually bailing out Black mothers, hands down, has been the most rewarding.
So now you mentioned the referendum. The city council had voted to count the ballots, and now there's some confusion about it. Could you explain what's happened with the signatures, and has it been verified? What's the status of that right now?
So when we turned in the petition signatures, we had already we were given an extension from a judge. And that is because we initially, when we started, they said only City of Atlanta residents could collect signatures. And one of our commitments in this campaign was that the folk in DeKalb should have some way to engage this. If they can't vote, folks in DeKalb said, well, we want to at least collect signatures and let people know you got to think about us. If you don't have an opinion, think about our situation. And so when we learned that they couldn't even collect petition signatures, we had gotten word from other comrades across the country that other courts had said it's a violation of people's First Amendment right, that you cannot have residency requirements on who can collect a petition. And so we filed that. And the judge gave us an injunction, which he said, all right, anybody can collect signatures. And he said, on top of that, I'm going to give you some extra days because you all have been limited, based on only Atlanta residents can sign up until this point. So they gave us until September 25th. But then the city of Atlanta responded and said, and, I'm thinking these are Democrats. Somebody literally asked me, do you think the city's going to fight that? I said, well, why would they fight that? It's expanding democracy. These are Democrats. Well, oh no, our city, our leadership decided that they were going to challenge that notion. And a judge said, no, I'm going to stay my order. This is, what I said goes. And then City of Atlanta appealed it to a higher court. And the higher court said, pause. And that is literally what they said. They just said pause on the injunction. So we didn't know if that meant the signatures we had, because at that point, the first 60-day deadline was up. We're like, should we turn them in? Should we still keep collecting and go to the 25th? It left us all confused. And so we decided, based on the, safety of the ones we'd already gathered, the 116,000, that let's just go ahead and turn them in. So we turned them in on August 21st. And when we got there, the city knew we were coming. We were told by the city attorney that they could take the signatures and put them in a little storage closet, but they were not going to verify them because of what this judge had said. And we were like, our attorney for the campaign said, well, look, if you all are willing, and if you all want the people's voices to be heard, both you and I as attorneys can draft a letter to the judge right now. We are united to say we want these things verified and to ask that judge to say, yes, it's cool if you all proceed with the process. And the city said no. They made a choice and said no. And so maybe about a week or two later, they said, well, because we kept hearing the mayor saying, I want to see what's in the boxes. And he had already said that the only way we could collect these signatures is if we did it by fraud. Well, how disrespectful. Said that we would betray our people and try to fraud this thing.
Wow.
And so we said, okay, it ain't air in the boxes. Those are real life signatures. And so we said, go ahead and digitize them. Digitize them so you all can see that these are in fact real life signatures. Mm-hmm. And like we collected 116, we only needed 58,000 and some change, but we accounted for a margin of error because there are some folks who signed it. And I remember a brother told me in the West End, I was right there by the CVS. And I said, sir, do you live in the city? He said, yes. Signed my petition. I saw what he was signing. He lived in Lithonia. I said, sir, you do not live in the city. But he said, West End is my home. My family owns a home here. This is my home. And I'm not going to argue with Black people when we claim where home is, you know? And I think it also speaks to the gentrification. Yeah. Our people belong here, but can't afford to be here. And that's not okay. So anywho, so they digitized them. And then we thought, and what we were led to believe is that once they digitized and saw that they were in fact real signatures, that the city council would initiate and say, let's just put it on the ballot. We don't have to verify them because they do have the power to put it on the ballot. They could have called this question years ago. With all of the controversy, it was the right thing for them to do. They put everything else on there they wanted to. So we thought they would do that. But instead, they put them online. And instead of redacting the private information of people, they did not. And they published all 116,000 with folks' names, addresses, some birth dates, and their phone numbers, mostly cell phone numbers.
Is that even legal?
They're saying, based on the open records laws in Georgia, that what they did is legal. And part of what we said, these are cell phone numbers. You can't do that. They said, well, we make an assumption, and this is based off of old law, that they're landlines. I said, well, you could do a sample, pick 100, and I guarantee you these are not landlines. Most folk don't have landlines anymore. And so the city, we sent a cease and desist to tell them, take that file down. If people request it, they can. It's an open record. When we gave it to them, it was an open record. That's fair game. But to literally publish it on the city's website is unacceptable because we know this is a very contentious topic. And we know that some people have experienced, all matter of backlash by being a part of this movement. And we did not think it was fair. When folks signed that, we did not think that that was something that they would have to experience, know ourselves. I mean, literally, you pull up the document, my name is the first one you see. I signed those things out. I was the first one to sign it. I signed them in and got all my information. I got a wife, kid, baby, all kind of stuff here, but I'm covered. So I'm not afraid. And so that is the situation we find ourselves in. They published them. They have not said that they are going to verify them. They're saying that they're waiting on the judge to make a decision. And every lawyer that we have talked to, there has lawyers who have been written. They wrote legal opinions directly to the legal counsel saying, actually, you all can do this. You all can do this. And they are choosing not to. And that is the heartbreaking part in this moment.
So what would you say the next steps for the group in response to all that would be? And is there a call for action for the community at this point? Because the sense is that they're using a stalling tactic, really, so that it would not appear to be voted on.
We're letting the legal folks do what they do. There's going to be an ordinance that has been drafted by some other smart attorneys to say you can move this. Excuse me. So I believe the next council meeting just next Monday or the Monday after, next full council meeting, it will be introduced. And likely will go to the Rules on Council, Rules on Committee, one of those committees. And hopefully it will make its way back out of that committee for full council to vote on it. Now with it, it's not going to get on the ballot in November. That was what we were hoping for. That's why we sweated and did all the things all summer and moved with such haste to get it on the ballot in November. But at this point, absentee ballots for, school board and everything has been sent out. And so we're banking on March, which is going to be tough. But, we like a good challenge, okay? And
so what would you say the community can do to push this forward, to really, make it happen, to help in the process at least?
Yeah, I think it is important that people call their council people. People need to call the council people and let them know we want to vote on this. This is our right. This is, part of the law, allows us to vote on matters that concern us. And rather be calling or going in person, but they need to see us. And they need to specifically see Black people fighting for our opportunity to vote. And it's unfortunate that we have to in this city, but here we are. And part of what we also know to be true is that though many people want this on the ballot, some people are still torn about Cop City and whether or not the police need this training center. And so part of our work, we just held, we did a virtual town hall, and we'll be doing another one the first Monday of every month, and we'll keep doing that up and through the vote. If folks follow CopCityVote on Instagram, that's typically where we'll share those things out. Or you might get a phone call, because we do a little phone banking using the van. Do we want to live in a city that has the most surveilled, one of the largest police departments outside of LA, New York, and Chicago? Or do we think we can turn the tide and envision something else and head down a new direction?
Well, look, we are so very grateful that you've taken this time to shed some light on this issue for us and on other issues, all related. I just wanted to personally thank you, and on the part of the behalf of the group, we so appreciate your taking the time to talk with us today. Thank you so much.
Brothers and sisters, you have been listening to Sister Mary Hooks, who is a Stop Cop City Coalition activist in Atlanta. She also serves as the field secretary for the Movement for Black Lives. As she discussed the referendum and petition signatures collected and turned into the city of Atlanta, and the hope that the Cop City issue will be put on the ballot. For more information about today's topic, you can follow the movement to Stop Cop City at CopCityVotes on Instagram. And you can visit the website for the movement for Black Lives at www.m4bl.org. Or you can email Sister Hooks at mary@m4bl.org.
Thank you for joining us for the Black Slate Atlanta podcast, where we address issues that impact our communities in the Atlanta area. Please let us know if you would like to join and help us address the issues that impact the legislation and decisions which affect our neighborhoods and our daily lives. We hope you found the Black Slate Atlanta podcast to be beneficial and enlightening. If you have any topics or issues that you would like us to address, or if you would like to volunteer to join the Black Slate Atlanta movement, email us at blackslateatl10@yahoo.com. Also, visit our website at www.blackslateatl.org or scan our QR code for more information. Join us again for the next Black Slate Atlanta podcast and help us help you by holding our elected officials accountable to the needs and interests of our community.